Have you ever wondered what it feels like when even the strongest, most composed person you know begins to break down in private? When the polished smile the world sees masks a storm of fear, grief, and uncertainty behind closed doors. That storm is happening right now, behind the walls of Kensington Palace, and it involves none other than Kate Middleton, the Duchess of Cambridge. The news, still whispered in the corridors of royal power, has finally surfaced in bits and pieces. Kate has begun writing farewell letters to her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. The implications are staggering. Prince William, the future king, and King Charles themselves were reportedly brought to tears upon learning of her secretive actions. Imagine that for a moment. The future of the monarchy, the heirs to the throne, all shaken by the private agony of one woman. The palace has always been a place of carefully managed appearances. Every event is choreographed, every photo meticulously posed, every word calculated. Royals are trained from birth to project composure and stoicism. Kate, a figure almost universally beloved for her grace and poise, has been no exception. She has mastered the art of smiling for the cameras, of appearing calm and in control while navigating countless public duties, charity events, and global tours. But behind the regal exterior, whispers have grown louder in recent months. Those closest to her have noticed moments of exhaustion, subtle signs of worry etched across her face, fleeting expressions of despair caught by the sharpest photographers and discreet aides. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What drove Kate to take the drastic step of writing these letters? What thoughts and fears could push a mother, a duchess, to put pen to paper in such a profoundly private, heartbreaking act? The letters themselves are said to be deeply personal, notes filled with love, reassurance, and, tragically, hints of fear. They are messages that no mother should ever feel the need to write. Messages prepared for a future she quietly dreads but cannot voice aloud. These letters are more than words on paper. They are a mirror into the unseen, unspoken life of someone whose every public move is scrutinized. To understand why this moment matters, you have to grasp the immense pressures of royal life. Every decision is under a microscope, every personal struggle is fodder for tabloids, and privacy is a luxury rarely afforded. Imagine facing that pressure while raising 3 children who, in a few short years, will become the faces of the monarchy themselves. Kate has not only had to navigate these challenges for herself, but also shield George, Charlotte, and Louis from the public gaze, trying to give them as normal a childhood as possible under extraordinary circumstances. Every smile at a photo opportunity, every carefully chosen outfit, every public handshake has been a performance masking a deeply human struggle. And now, that struggle has reached a tipping point. Prince William, described by those close to him as devoted and unwavering in his support, has reportedly been deeply affected by Kate's letters. Known for his composed and calm demeanor, William's private reaction to the discovery of these farewell notes reportedly included tears and moments of silent despair. Seeing the mother of his children, the woman he has relied on and loved through decades of royal duty, in such a state of hidden anguish shook him to his core. And if William, trained since childhood to manage immense stress and public responsibility, can be brought to tears by the silent suffering of his wife, one can only imagine the depth of Kate's private pain. King Charles, a figure often characterized as stern and deliberate, was similarly overwhelmed upon learning of Kate's actions. A monarch with decades of experience in managing both state affairs and the delicate intricacies of family life, Charles reportedly found himself shaken, struggling to reconcile the image of a poised duchess with the reality revealed in these letters. Observers suggest that the king's immediate response included urgent consultations with palace aides and medical professionals, as the gravity of the situation began to unfold behind closed doors. Charles, who has faced innumerable public and private crises, found himself confronted with a dilemma that no protocol or royal guideline could solve: how to protect the well-being of a woman he sees as a daughter-in-law, a mother, and a central figure in the monarchy, while also safeguarding the future of the royal family. The letters themselves have become the subject of intense speculation. While the contents remain mostly confidential, insiders describe them as deeply personal, a mix of guidance, reassurance, and hidden fears. They are letters that, in essence, prepare her children for moments she quietly fears may come, revealing a vulnerability rarely seen in someone of her public stature. Each word is said to carry layers of emotion, blending maternal love with a quiet acknowledgement of uncertainty. The act of writing them suggests a mind deeply troubled, a heart burdened with responsibility, and a woman striving to maintain control in circumstances that feel overwhelming. It is worth considering the broader context of these developments. Royal family dynamics are complex, interwoven with history, duty, and public scrutiny. For Kate to reach a point where writing goodbye letters seem necessary implies pressures that extend beyond what the public can imagine. Every official appearance, every ceremonial engagement, every smile captured by the media is part of a delicate balancing act. Kate's internal world, her fears, her anxieties, her emotional exhaustion, has remained hidden, but it now intersects with the very public lives of her family. The revelation of these letters forces a confrontation between the private and the public, between what is manageable and what has become urgent. As the story begins to surface, the palace has reportedly taken measures to contain the situation. Security protocols have been heightened, private consultations with mental health professionals arranged, and select members of the household briefed on how to proceed. Yet, despite these efforts, the emotional tremors are felt across the royal spectrum. Every aide, every staff member, every family member connected to Kate is aware that something unprecedented is unfolding. This is no ordinary moment of personal difficulty. It is a crisis that touches the very core of the family's stability. Why now? Why have these letters surfaced at this particular moment? Insiders suggest that a combination of stressors, both personal and professional, have contributed. The pressures of the monarchy are relentless: public engagements, charitable duties, diplomatic responsibilities, and the scrutiny of a global audience. Kate's personal health, emotional resilience, and her profound sense of duty have converged into a situation where action was necessary, not just for herself, but for the children she loves more than anything. Writing these letters is an act of preparation, a private measure intended to ensure that, no matter what happens, her children are guided by her voice, her wisdom, and her love. The impact on her children, while not fully visible, cannot be underestimated. George, Charlotte, and Louis, though young, are perceptive and attuned to their parents' moods. The subtleties of tension, anxiety, or sorrow are absorbed by children even when unspoken. Kate's choice to write these letters can be seen as an attempt to provide comfort and stability in the face of uncertainty, a way to speak directly to them even in moments when she cannot physically be present or emotionally unburdened. It is both heartbreaking and deeply maternal, revealing a layer of foresight and love that the public rarely sees. This story matters not just because of the personal struggle of Kate Middleton, but because it underscores the human vulnerability that exists even in positions of immense privilege and power. Royals are often perceived as untouchable, impervious to ordinary human fears and frailties. Yet here, behind the polished events and perfect appearances, a woman contends with emotions that any parent could recognize: fear, love, worry, and the overwhelming responsibility of protecting her family. It is a reminder that titles, wealth, and status do not shield one from the fundamental human experience of vulnerability. And as the public becomes more aware of this situation, the tension only grows. What will be the fallout if these letters are ever revealed? How will the family cope with the emotional exposure? What will it mean for the public perception of the monarchy if the private struggles of one of its most beloved members come to light? These questions loom large, and every moment since the letters were written has been steeped in quiet urgency, secrecy, and the weight of potential revelation. But the most gripping aspect of this story is what comes next. Kate Middleton's actions have set in motion a chain of events that the palace has never faced before. Even the closest aides are uncertain how the family will respond, how the children will process the information, and what steps will be taken to protect Kate's privacy while ensuring her well-being. The tension is palpable. The emotional stakes could not be higher. Every royal event, every press briefing, every private conversation now carries the shadow of this unfolding drama. And while the public remains largely unaware, the palace walls are buzzing with quiet urgency, whispered discussions, and the unspoken fear of what might come if these letters become known outside the inner circle. So, what happens when the weight of duty, love, and personal struggle collide in the life of a duchess? What choices will Kate make, and how will they ripple across the monarchy? Prince William and King Charles have already felt the emotional impact, but the story is far from over. Behind every smile, every public appearance, every gracious gesture, lies a complex web of emotion, decision-making, and human vulnerability that the world is only beginning to glimpse. The question now hangs in the air. What will Kate do next, and how will this private battle shape not only her life, but the lives of her children and the future of the royal family? One thing is certain: what comes next will shock everyone, and the consequences could be both profound and far-reaching. Have you ever wondered what it's like to live a life where every move, every gesture, every word is observed, dissected, and judged by millions? Where your happiness is public property, but your pain must be hidden at all costs. This is the reality Kate Middleton has faced for more than a decade. Behind the polished public appearances, the perfectly coiffed hair, the impeccable wardrobe, and the poised smile, there is a woman who has battled quietly with pressures most of us can barely imagine. And now, those pressures have reached a breaking point. From the very beginning, Kate's life was never meant to be ordinary. Born Catherine Elizabeth Middleton in 1982, she was raised in a middle-class family, a world far removed from the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace. She grew up in Berkshire, with 2 siblings and parents who instilled in her a sense of normalcy, discipline, and a love of family. But destiny had other plans. By the time she met Prince William at the University of St. Andrews, her life was already poised for a radical transformation. What started as a college romance soon became a relationship under an intense global spotlight. Every date, every outing, every casual smile was scrutinized. And Kate adapted. She learned quickly. She smiled when cameras flashed. She laughed when appropriate. She nodded and curtsied at exactly the right moments. She became the woman the world adored, the duchess everyone wished they could be. But here's the thing: perfection comes at a cost. Every public smile is meticulously curated. Every fashion choice is a carefully calculated decision. Every handshake, every public statement, every charity visit is weighed not just for optics, but for history. And behind those flawless appearances, the human being, the wife, the mother, the woman, remains unseen. Kate's life is a constant balancing act, walking a tightrope between personal desire and public expectation. For years, she played the role flawlessly. She learned the nuances of royal protocol, navigated family dynamics with tact, and became a beloved figure across the United Kingdom and beyond. She gave birth to George, Charlotte, and Louis, providing the public with heartwarming glimpses of her life as a mother. The world admired her composure, her elegance, her devotion to her children. But what the world did not see, and what few within the palace walls can truly comprehend, was the weight she carried behind that facade. Even in private, Kate is said to be her harshest critic. Close aides have described her as intensely disciplined, holding herself to standards that seem unattainable. She pushes herself relentlessly, often sacrificing her own needs to ensure that her children are happy. Her public image remains untarnished, and the monarchy continues smoothly. But in this relentless pursuit of perfection, there is a price: exhaustion, anxiety, and, in recent months, an alarming sense of despair. Insiders have revealed that Kate's battle is not only emotional but physical. She has reportedly struggled with stress-related ailments, difficulty sleeping, and moments of profound fatigue that cannot be alleviated by rest alone. Imagine managing state engagements, attending charity galas, overseeing royal projects, and yet, privately, feeling a growing sense of helplessness. The Duchess is human, and her humanity is showing cracks that no public appearance can conceal. What makes her situation particularly tragic is the intersection of duty and motherhood. Kate's love for her children is profound. George, Charlotte, and Louis are the center of her world, but her position as a royal mother is fraught with unique challenges. She cannot simply step away, take a personal day, or express vulnerability publicly. The weight of expectation is constant. Every moment of maternal exhaustion or personal fear is compounded by the knowledge that millions are watching. Every misstep is magnified. Every private struggle risks becoming a public spectacle. And so, the letters. The heartbreaking farewell letters that Kate has begun writing to her children are not simply expressions of despair. They are an attempt to assert control in a life where control is rare. They are a testament to a mother's love, a desperate effort to communicate her guidance, her reassurance, and her unconditional love should circumstances take a turn she fears she cannot prevent. These letters are deeply personal, yet their mere existence hints at the intensity of Kate's internal struggle. You might wonder, why would a mother feel the need to write such letters? To understand, you need to consider the layers of her life. First, there is the relentless public scrutiny. Every outfit is critiqued, every smile dissected, every moment judged. Social media amplifies mistakes, rumors spread like wildfire, and the press thrives on speculation. Kate has endured years of this, maintaining her composure while privately grappling with anxiety about how her children are growing up under such scrutiny. Then, there are the pressures within the family itself. Royal family dynamics are notoriously complex. Kate must navigate relationships not only with her husband, Prince William, but also with in-laws, advisors, and the extended family, all while maintaining the image of unity and grace. There are political considerations, ceremonial duties, and expectations that extend far beyond what any ordinary family experiences. The weight of maintaining appearances, protecting her children, and fulfilling her duties can feel overwhelming, even to someone as resilient as Kate. And finally, there is the very real human fear of the unknown. Writing these letters, as heartbreaking as it may seem, is a way for Kate to prepare for uncertainties she cannot control. She is safeguarding her children's understanding of her love, ensuring that her guidance persists even if circumstances prevent her from being physically present. It is a profoundly maternal act, one that is both sorrowful and deeply loving. Consider the emotional impact on those around her. Prince William, who has stood steadfastly by her side for years, is reportedly shaken by these revelations. Known for his composure and calm demeanor, he has never been seen vulnerable in public. Yet, in private, the discovery of these letters reportedly brought him to tears. To witness the mother of your children in such pain is a visceral experience, one that speaks to the depth of both her struggle and his empathy. King Charles, too, has been affected. A man who has weathered decades of public and private trials. Charles is confronted with a situation that no protocol or royal handbook can address. How do you support a member of your family while also protecting the legacy of the monarchy? How do you respond to a human crisis without letting it unravel centuries of tradition and expectation? According to insiders, these questions have led to urgent private consultations, careful monitoring of Kate's well-being, and discreet measures to ensure her safety and privacy. But here's the twist. While the letters are deeply personal and private, their discovery within the palace has already created ripples of concern and speculation. Staff members, advisors, and family members are acutely aware that something unprecedented is unfolding. Every gesture, every word, every action is now scrutinized not just for public perception, but for its potential impact on Kate's emotional state. The palace, a place traditionally associated with protocol and decorum, is now a stage for a profoundly human struggle. But the children's awareness continued to deepen. George began asking more questions about why some grown-ups seemed sad, why certain conversations ended abruptly, and why his mother sometimes needed to step away without explanation. Charlotte's empathy deepened, and she started attempting to comfort her younger brother, Louis, who seemed increasingly sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around him. And in that moment, the palace staff and parents alike realized a truth. Children, even at a young age, sense far more than adults often give them credit for. They absorb emotion, interpret subtle cues, and respond in ways that are deeply human. Kate's letters, though private, were part of an intricate emotional ecosystem, an attempt to safeguard her children from uncertainty while navigating the unavoidable reality that they already perceived the gravity of the situation. The weight of this realization struck William profoundly. His father, Charles, had confronted his own vulnerability, and now William was witnessing his children confronting theirs in silent, poignant ways. The generational echoes of awareness, fear, and resilience created a tapestry of emotional complexity that was both heartwarming and devastating. Yet just when it seemed that a fragile balance had been struck, a new, unforeseen complication arose. One of the children's favorite activities, a carefully scheduled play date in the gardens, was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Someone from outside the trusted circle had entered the vicinity, potentially observing interactions between Kate and the children. Though the intruder's intent was unclear, the presence alone was enough to disrupt the delicate equilibrium, to remind everyone that privacy, particularly for a royal family, is never guaranteed. And in that instant, the question that had been looming in every adult's mind crystallized. How much longer could this fragile veil of normalcy hold? How long before the children's awareness, the letters, and the private emotional truths collided with a world eager to expose, speculate, and sensationalize? Because even in the quietest corners of the palace, one truth remains inescapable. The emotional lives of George, Charlotte, and Louis are intertwined with the public. Have you ever seen a grown man cry in a place where the world expects him to be stoic? Where the eyes of millions are imagined, even when no cameras are present? For William and Charles, that day came suddenly, like a storm breaking over an unsuspecting landscape, leaving devastation and clarity in its wake. It started in a private sitting room within the palace, a room usually reserved for quiet reflection, confidential discussions, and strategy away from the public gaze. William had called for a family meeting with Charles, a rare occurrence that, under normal circumstances, would signal nothing more than routine planning. But the atmosphere this time was different. There was tension, unspoken, almost tangible, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. William paced the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by restless energy. He spoke, but his voice trembled slightly. "Father, it's her letters. The ones she's been writing to the children." Charles, seated near the fireplace, leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. "I know. I've sensed it for weeks, William. I've watched Kate, tried to read the signs, but this is worse than I imagined." Pause. Silence. The weight of unspoken fears filled the space. For a moment, both men were simply fathers. Not princes, not heirs, not figures under scrutiny. Fathers, grappling with the realization that their loved one, Kate, was fighting battles too profound for words, battles that were pushing her to take measures that no parent should ever contemplate. Letters to children, in private, are intimate expressions of love, but in this context, they were a signal that something was deeply, alarmingly wrong. Charles's eyes glistened. "We cannot underestimate this, William. She's preparing for outcomes we cannot predict. She's thinking about them, the children, even when she's struggling herself." William stopped pacing and faced his father. "I see it, Father. Every glance George gives, every question Charlotte asks, every tear from Louis, it's all tied to her. She's trying to shield them, but they feel it. They sense it. And we feel powerless." Powerless. That word hung between them. Two men, trained to rule, trained to command, trained to endure the pressures of monarchy, now faced the limitations of their humanity. Their pain wasn't only for Kate. It was for the children, for the family as a whole, and for the fragile bond between public expectation and private reality. Charles, usually composed and diplomatic, finally broke. A single tear traced down his cheek, a rare glimpse of vulnerability in a man who had spent decades learning to hide his emotions behind protocol and tradition. William, seeing his father's uncharacteristic display, felt an emotional earthquake within himself. The weight of responsibility, compounded by love and fear, was almost unbearable. Do you think she'll be able to handle this?" William asked, his voice almost a whisper. "The scrutiny, the pressures, the children." Charles looked away briefly, struggling to compose himself. "I don't know, William. I wish I did. But we must do everything we can to protect her. To protect them. To protect the family." They sat in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound, a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in both their minds. And then, almost simultaneously, both men recognized a grim reality. The letters were not just messages of love. They were lifelines, insurance, a way for Kate to communicate what words could not fully capture while shielding the children from fear. William's mind raced. Every public appearance, every smile and photographs, every speech had been carefully orchestrated to project normalcy. Yet behind closed doors, Kate's emotional landscape was far more fragile than anyone realized. The weight she carried, private and invisible, was now manifesting in ways that threatened to reshape the family dynamic entirely. The two men discussed options: counseling, private retreats, even temporary withdrawal from certain royal duties. But all suggestions seemed to scratch only the surface. None could truly address the emotional reality of a mother contemplating the unthinkable, a woman writing farewell letters to her children in the quiet moments when no one could see. And then, the conversation shifted. They began speaking of the children, not as heirs, not as public figures, not even as extensions of the monarchy, but as three young lives acutely aware of tension and uncertainty. George, at just 9 years old, already exhibiting emotional depth beyond his years. Charlotte, intuitive, empathetic, and quick to interpret emotional cues. Louis, youngest, whose sensitivity was raw and unfiltered, whose emotional responses were immediate and visceral. "We have to consider them in every action we take," Charles said firmly, regaining some composure. "Kate is thinking of them. We must think of them, too. Every word, every interaction must be measured, must be deliberate. Their emotional safety is paramount." William nodded, the burden of command weighing heavily on him. "I know, Father. And yet, seeing her like this, feeling the weight of what she's carrying, it's breaking my heart. How do we protect the children when the very person they depend on is struggling so deeply?" Charles rose and approached his son, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "We face this together, William. Like always. We support her, we support them, and we navigate this storm as a family. But we cannot pretend it isn't devastating. That is reality. And sometimes, acknowledging the depth of pain is the first step toward protection and healing." A silence settled again, but this one was different, weighted with mutual understanding, yet still tinged with fear. They knew the public could never truly grasp the gravity of the situation. The monarchy, an institution built on composure, ceremony, and image, had no blueprint for navigating intimate familial crises with children watching, sensing, and reacting. Then came a knock at the door. A palace aide, hesitant, entered. "Your Highnesses, there's a matter concerning the children. They've discovered one of the letters." Both men froze. Their eyes met, a silent communication passing between them, a mixture of dread and urgency. The letters had been written with discretion, carefully hidden, yet the unanticipated discovery by the children had changed everything. William's voice was low, urgent. "Which letter? Which child?" The aide hesitated, as though the words themselves carried too much weight. It's George, sir. He found the one addressed to him. He's reading it now." Time seemed to stand still. Charles, steadying himself against a nearby chair, felt the full impact of the moment. The private, painstakingly crafted messages meant as protection, as guidance, as a safeguard, were now being absorbed by the very young mind they were intended to comfort. William felt a surge of panic and helplessness. How would George process this? How would Charlotte and Louis react if they discovered similar letters? The delicate balance Kate had maintained, shielding her children while expressing her deepest love and fears, was now threatened. And as the aide departed quietly, leaving the two men alone with their thoughts, the reality was undeniable. The emotional stakes had just escalated beyond anything they had anticipated. The letters, meant as private acts of care, now held the potential to catalyze a cascade of emotional consequences. Charles, gripping the armrest, finally spoke. "We have to act. Immediately. But carefully. Every word, every move must preserve their innocence while addressing what they've already sensed." William nodded, the weight of impending decisions pressing down on him. "And Kate? How do we reach her without adding more pressure, without breaking her further? She's already carrying so much." Charles looked toward the window, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "We do what fathers do. We protect. We support. We hold steady, even when the storm is raging. But we must also prepare, for the possibility that the children's awareness and the letters could accelerate the need for intervention. The room fell silent once more, but the tension had shifted. It was no longer theoretical. The letters, the children, Kate's private struggles, they were all now tangible, immediate, and urgent. The very fabric of the family's emotional life was at a tipping point, and William and Charles understood the gravity. One misstep, one poorly timed revelation, could shatter the fragile equilibrium they were trying to maintain. And just when they thought they had grasped the full weight of the situation, a sudden cry echoed from the nursery, a cry that was unmistakably Louis. Sharp, piercing, and urgent. The youngest child's distress cut through the room like a bell, pulling both William and Charles from their deliberation. William's eyes widened. "Louis," he whispered, "what's happened?" Charles's voice was tight, controlled, yet laced with worry. "We find out. Now. But prepare yourself, William. What we discover may redefine everything we thought we understood about this day, this moment, and Kate's battle." Because in the private recesses of the palace, as fathers, protectors, and human beings, they were about to confront a reality more devastating than they could have imagined. A moment where the innocence of childhood collided with the raw vulnerability of a mother's love, and the consequences rippled across every corner of their lives. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. And the question that lingers in the minds of everyone connected to the Duchess is this: what led her to this point? Was it the cumulative effect of relentless public scrutiny, the private pressures of royal family life, the anxiety and fear of the unknown future, or a combination of all these factors? What we do know is that this is not a fleeting moment of vulnerability. This is a deep, sustained struggle, one that has led a woman known for her composure to take extraordinary steps to ensure her children know her love, even in circumstances she fears she may not be able to control. Imagine being in her position. Imagine the constant balancing act of public duty and private anguish. Imagine the careful smiles in front of cameras, the polished appearances at royal events, the curated social media presence, all while privately writing letters to your children that speak to fears the world may never understand. The emotional intensity is staggering, the stakes immense, and the human vulnerability undeniable. And yet, through all of this, Kate continues to fulfill her role. She continues to attend public engagements, maintain her family's image, and provide guidance to her children. She performs this extraordinary balancing act not for accolades, not for recognition, but out of love and duty. It is a reminder that behind the grandeur of royalty lies the profound, often unseen humanity of the individuals who inhabit it. So, as the palace grapples with this unprecedented situation, one thing is clear. Kate Middleton is not just a duchess, a mother, or a public figure. She is a human being, navigating one of the most complex, high-pressure, and emotionally charged lives imaginable. And the letters she has written, these profoundly personal gestures, are just the beginning of a story that will shock, move, and deeply resonate with everyone who has ever faced the tension between duty and personal vulnerability. But as the palace walls hum with quiet urgency and whispered conversations, one question hangs in the air. What happens when these private letters are discovered outside the inner circle? When the world sees the human pain behind the royal smile? The answer will shake the very foundations of the family and expose truths that no one could have predicted. What would you do if you discovered that someone you love deeply, someone whose very presence shapes your life, was quietly preparing for a reality you could barely imagine? Imagine, for a moment, the scene inside Buckingham Palace, the hushed corridors where whispers carry more weight than shouted commands, the ornate walls that have seen centuries of history, and now, they are silent witnesses to something profoundly human. Kate Middleton's letters to her children. These aren't ordinary notes tucked into lunchboxes or scribbled in a diary. These are meticulously crafted letters, farewell letters, that have shaken the very heart of the royal family. The first revelation came quietly. A trusted aide, tasked with organizing Kate's private correspondence, noticed the unusual stacks of stationery and the unusual frequency with which the Duchess had been writing. Normally, she would draft official letters related to charity work, public engagements, or thank you notes. But these letters were different. They were personal. intimate, raw, and their intended recipients were her three children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. At first, the aides thought perhaps she was writing bedtime notes, little messages of encouragement, or perhaps letters to read on special occasions. But as they reviewed the contents, discreetly and with utmost respect for her privacy, they realized these were farewell letters. Words that spoke to her love, her guidance, and her hopes for her children, should circumstances ever prevent her from being present in their lives. Each sentence was carefully composed, each paragraph filled with affection, advice, and the kind of wisdom only a mother can provide. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Kate Middleton, the woman who had always seemed invincible, was preparing for a possibility that shook even the most stoic members of the palace. What drove her to this point? Observers speculate it is a combination of pressures, relentless public scrutiny, the expectations of royalty, and the private fear of illness or tragedy. But insiders hint at something more immediate: a profound sense of responsibility for her children's emotional well-being. Kate knows that her life is never entirely her own. Every action is magnified, every decision dissected, every moment documented. And yet, she wants her children to have something beyond the reach of the press, beyond the grasp of public perception, a tangible reminder of her love and guidance. Consider this: the letters are reportedly addressed individually, with each child receiving words tailored to their age, personality, and emotional needs. To George, she writes about courage, integrity, and the importance of standing by one's convictions. To Charlotte, she imparts lessons on compassion, resilience, and self-belief. To Louis, she expresses her unwavering love and encourages curiosity, wonder, and imagination. These are not generic messages. They are intensely personal, deeply thoughtful, and reflective of a mother who knows the fragility of life and the unpredictability of circumstance. And yet, the emotional weight is overwhelming. How must it feel for a mother to put pen to paper in this way? To acknowledge, even privately, that life can be fragile and that her children may someday need guidance when she cannot be there? The act itself is heartbreaking, a window into the depth of her care and the seriousness of her internal struggle. It also raises profound questions about the pressures of royalty. How does one balance personal vulnerability with public duty? How do you protect your children from a world that scrutinizes every gesture, while also ensuring they feel loved, understood, and guided? Prince William reportedly first became aware of the letters during a quiet evening in the couple's private quarters. The moment was understated but charged with emotion. According to sources, William read the letters in private and was immediately struck by the gravity of the situation. The man who has often been described as calm, composed, and measured was reportedly moved to tears. It wasn't just the content of the letters, it was the realization of the silent, internal battle Kate had been waging for months, perhaps years. Every public smile, every appearance, every perfectly curated moment had been accompanied by private worry, private fear, and private preparation. King Charles, too, was reportedly affected. Known for his long experience with royal duties and public scrutiny, Charles is no stranger to challenges, crises, or family tension. But these letters reportedly stunned him. They represented a vulnerability rarely seen within the palace, a window into the deeply human experience of someone born into extraordinary circumstances. For Charles, the letters were not only a matter of concern for Kate's well-being. They were also a stark reminder of the immense pressures the family faces and the delicate balance of duty, love, and public expectation. The discovery of the letters has also sent ripples throughout the palace staff. Private secretaries, aides, and advisors are now acutely aware of the Duchess's state of mind. Meetings that once focused solely on logistics, appearances, and public engagements now include discussions about emotional support, wellness, and privacy. There is an increased sensitivity in interactions with the Duchess, a careful consideration of her physical and emotional state, and a heightened awareness of the profound human drama unfolding behind closed doors. The content of the letters themselves is, of course, confidential, but what has leaked from trusted insiders paints a picture of extraordinary love and foresight. Kate reportedly emphasizes to her children the importance of kindness, the value of integrity, and the need to protect and cherish one another. She writes about the inevitability of challenges and setbacks, offering encouragement and advice on how to navigate them. She acknowledges her own imperfections and her hopes that her children will grow into compassionate, wise, and resilient adults. What makes this situation particularly poignant is the juxtaposition between public perception and private reality. To the outside world, Kate is the epitome of grace, composure, and royal perfection. She smiles at cameras, engages warmly with the public, and performs her duties flawlessly. But these letters reveal a hidden depth, a quiet struggle that is invisible to the millions who admire her from afar. They remind us that behind the titles, the protocol, and the pageantry, there is a deeply human experience, one of love, fear, and responsibility. And yet, there is another layer of complexity, the potential implications of these letters if ever made public. The royal family is no stranger to media scrutiny, leaks, and speculation. Should these letters reach the public eye, they would not merely be a private glimpse into the Duchess's emotional life. They would become a topic of global fascination, analysis, and debate. Would the world interpret them as a sign of vulnerability, as a call for empathy, or as evidence of the pressures that come with being a modern royal? This brings us to an even more troubling question. What prompted Kate to take such a step at this particular moment? Insiders speculate that recent personal and family developments may have heightened her awareness of life's fragility. Perhaps it was a private health scare, an emotional low, or a moment of reflection on her children's futures. Whatever the catalyst, the letters are now a symbol of the intersection between personal vulnerability and the inescapable demands of royal life. The emotional stakes are enormous. Prince William reportedly fears for his wife's well-being, understanding the immense burden she carries. King Charles is grappling with the dual responsibilities of supporting his daughter-in-law while also maintaining the stability and continuity of the monarchy. Palace staff are acutely aware that this is not a fleeting moment, but a profound turning point. Every gesture, every conversation, every decision carries heightened significance. And while the letters are deeply private, they have already begun to reshape the palace's approach to Kate's well-being. Advisors are reportedly arranging additional support, private consultations with wellness experts, and careful monitoring of her physical and emotional state. The aim is to provide Kate with the resources she needs to navigate this challenging period, while also ensuring that her children remain emotionally supported and protected from undue public scrutiny. But here's the question that continues to linger in everyone's minds. What happens next? How does a family balance the intense pressures of royal duty with the deeply human needs of its members? How do you honor privacy while ensuring emotional support? And most importantly, how does Kate find a path forward that allows her to continue fulfilling her role as a mother, a duchess, and a human being, without succumbing to the immense pressures that have brought her to this point? The letters, in many ways, are just the beginning. They are a symptom of a deeper struggle, a signal of the emotional intensity that exists behind the palace walls. And as the royal family and palace staff navigate this delicate situation, one thing is certain. The consequences of these letters, both private and potentially public, will be far-reaching, and the emotional reverberations are only beginning to be felt. But what came next would send shockwaves through the palace and the royal family that no one could have predicted, and would ultimately set the stage for events that would change the course of Kate Middleton's life forever. Have you ever wondered what it's like to witness someone you love slipping into a private struggle you cannot fully reach? Prince William, the future king, the man trained from birth to be composed under pressure, found himself in a situation that no amount of royal training could have prepared him for. The letters. Kate Middleton's farewell letters to George, Charlotte, and Louis. The mere existence of them pierced through William's carefully constructed armor, leaving him exposed to a whirlwind of emotions: fear, helplessness, anger, and heartbreak, all at once. Imagine the scene: a dimly lit study in Kensington Palace, the late evening hush settling over the corridors as if the walls themselves understood the gravity of the moment. William sits at his desk, letters in hand, reading each word over and over. The precision and care in Kate's handwriting, the thoughtful structure, the way she addresses each child individually, weighs on him more heavily than any public scandal or diplomatic crisis he has faced. It's raw, It's real, and it's deeply unnerving. William's first thought was disbelief. How could Kate, ever composed, ever present, the very image of royal grace, feel the need to write farewell letters? The questions began to stack up, piling into his mind with suffocating force. Was she unwell? Was she contemplating something he couldn't yet see? Had he missed signs in her behavior that hinted at a deeper struggle? He replayed every public engagement, every smile, every interaction with their children. Was he blind? Had he failed to notice her silent anguish? And then came the second wave, guilt. The guilt of being Prince William, the man who is supposed to protect, support, and guide, yet feeling powerless in the face of his wife's private turmoil. He had navigated countless public crises, political missteps, media storms, family tensions, but nothing prepared him for the private, intimate vulnerability of a spouse who silently carries a weight she feels she must bear alone. Palace insiders report that William withdrew in the days following the discovery of the letters. He limited his public engagements, citing fatigue and an urgent need to manage private family affairs. Close aides noticed a change. His normally precise routine became erratic, his focus occasionally distant, his conversations tinged with a tension that was previously foreign. It was clear to those who worked closest with him that something had shifted. But William's turmoil wasn't just emotional, it was deeply practical. He had to consider the implications for their children. George, Charlotte, and Louis are young, perceptive, and intelligent. Children of their status may live in a world of protocol and tradition, but they are still children. How would they be affected if the existence of these letters were revealed prematurely? How would they process the idea that their mother felt the need to prepare for the possibility of absence? The weight of royal responsibility collided head-on with the weight of familial love, leaving William caught in a moral and emotional dilemma. The pressure was compounded by King Charles, who reportedly struggled to balance concern for his daughter-in-law with the expectations of the monarchy. Charles, seasoned in navigating public image and private scandal, recognized the delicacy of the situation. He understood that the letters were not merely private sentiments. They were a reflection of the human fragility that exists even within royal life. Reports suggest that Charles and William had long, private conversations, sometimes late into the night, about how best to support Kate while maintaining stability for the children and the family's public responsibilities. And then there were the rumors, the whispers that inevitably follow any revelation within the palace. Staff, private secretaries, and aides were under strict instructions to maintain discretion, yet the palace is never truly quiet. Each revelation sparks speculation. Each gesture invites interpretation. William was acutely aware of this. He had seen the media twist words, manufacture stories, and pry into private lives before. He feared the letters might one day leak, and with them, the delicate emotional landscape of his family could be exposed to public scrutiny, magnifying the pain already present. But the emotional toll went deeper than public perception. Those who know William best describe him as intensely private, deeply loyal, and profoundly protective of his family. He experienced waves of anger, not at Kate, never at Kate, but at the circumstances that drove her to this point. The pressures of royal life, the relentless public gaze, the expectations of perfection in every moment weighed heavily on her. He resented the intrusion of a world that demands so much while offering so little understanding. The letters were a symptom, yes, but also a mirror, reflecting the very real vulnerabilities that royalty seldom acknowledges publicly. In private, William reportedly grappled with feelings of helplessness. How do you support someone whose struggle is both private and deeply personal? How do you provide reassurance without overstepping, without diminishing their autonomy, without inadvertently causing more pain? Sources close to the couple suggest that William spent hours reflecting, pacing through corridors, revisiting every interaction, and wondering if he had missed the subtle signs that something was amiss. The letters, meticulously written and intended for the children, also forced him to confront his own limitations as a husband and father. And then came the breaking point. A private moment with Kate, reportedly in the nursery where the children often play, left William emotionally overwhelmed. Watching her move among the toys, glancing at each carefully arranged drawing, toy, or book, he realized the extent of her preoccupation with preparing for the unimaginable. She spoke in quiet, measured tones, yet every word carried the weight of someone grappling with the reality of potential absence. Observers describe a moment of intense vulnerability. William, ever composed in public, visibly shaken, tears brimming, feeling the enormity of what his wife was silently enduring. But it wasn't just about the letters themselves. It was about what they represented. The letters were a declaration of foresight, of preparedness, of love. They were Kate's way of ensuring that, should the unthinkable occur, her children would carry a piece of her guidance, her wisdom, and her presence in a form they could hold, read, and feel. For William, the letters were both a comfort and a profound source of anxiety. They revealed her thoughtfulness, her love, but also the seriousness of her private struggle and the need for him to act decisively and protectively. As the days passed, William reportedly sought counsel from trusted advisors outside the palace. Mental health professionals, private aides, and family confidants were consulted to ensure that Kate's emotional well-being was supported without intruding on her privacy. Every decision carried immense significance. The balance between public duty, private support, and the emotional health of their children was precarious, and any misstep could have lasting consequences. And yet, even amid this turmoil, William found moments of resilience. He reportedly spent hours reading the letters, reflecting on Kate's words, and finding ways to reinforce her guidance in daily life. He engaged the children in activities designed to strengthen their emotional bonds, to ensure that they felt loved, secure, and supported even amidst the uncertainty. Observers suggest that William's approach was deliberate, to honor Kate's intentions while also asserting his role as protector, mentor, and father. But the palace itself, steeped in centuries of tradition, protocol, and expectation, did not make this easier. Every staff member, every advisor, every protocol officer was acutely aware that the family was navigating a profoundly human crisis behind the palace walls. Conversations about public appearances, upcoming events, and ceremonial duties now carried a new layer of complexity. The need to accommodate Kate's emotional state, to shield the children, and to maintain an image of stability that the public expects from the future king and his family. And while William sought to protect his family and provide support, the emotional stakes continued to escalate. Every day brought new challenges. Balancing public appearances with private needs, managing his own emotions while tending to Kate and the children, and anticipating the potential consequences should these letters or the underlying concerns become public knowledge. The weight was immense and the tension palpable. Then came an unexpected complication. Reports indicate that a small, seemingly innocuous misunderstanding among palace staff threatened to expose the existence of the letters prematurely. William, learning of the situation, reportedly acted swiftly, personally intervening to ensure that discretion was maintained. The pressure of secrecy, the need for absolute control over sensitive information, added yet another layer of stress, compounding an already intense emotional landscape. So here's the question. How does one navigate such a precarious balance? How does William continue to fulfill his public duties, protect his family, and manage his own emotional response, all while safeguarding the private, intimate revelations contained within Kate's letters? The answers are uncertain, the stakes are high, and the potential consequences are profound. Have you ever seen a man who has been trained his whole life to command respect, embody composure, and project unshakable authority break in a way that is so raw, it's almost unbearable to witness? That was King Charles in the days following the discovery of Kate Middleton's farewell letters. Behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace, behind the curtains of ceremonial poise, the monarch confronted a truth no king wants to face. His daughter-in-law, the mother of his grandchildren, was quietly battling something devastating, and the weight of it reached far beyond her own heart. It started in the late evening, in a private sitting room, far from the public eye and cameras. Charles, usually the portrait of restraint, reportedly spoke with aides about Kate in a tone that left everyone stunned. The words weren't calculated, they weren't strategic, they were human. "She is preparing for a world we cannot imagine," he said, his voice trembling, "and I am helpless to protect her from it." Even those who have worked with him for decades were unprepared for the emotion, the palpable vulnerability that laced every syllable. Imagine for a moment what it must have been like. A king, accustomed to leading nations, mediating crises, and managing a dynasty, confronted with a private family tragedy that no royal protocol could mitigate. It wasn't about politics, succession, or public perception. This was about a woman he had come to deeply respect and love as a daughter-in-law, a mother, and a partner to his son. The letters were a mirror of her silent suffering, and Charles, for all his experience, felt powerless. Palace insiders described Charles pacing the room, hands running through his hair, eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. He considered the implications, the effect on George, Charlotte, and Louis, the potential public fallout if these letters became known, and the emotional toll on Prince William, who was already navigating an overwhelming burden. Every possible scenario played out in his mind, each one darker than the last. And yet, amid the panic and worry, there was a thread of understanding, a realization that the letters, though heartbreaking, were a testament to Kate's foresight, love, and courage. They weren't a cry for attention, nor a dramatic gesture. They were a silent, powerful testament to her devotion to her children. And Charles knew this. He understood that the letters were Kate's way of ensuring that, should anything happen to her, George, Charlotte, and Louis would still carry a piece of her presence, her wisdom, and her guidance. But this realization didn't make the situation any easier. Far from it. Charles reportedly confided that seeing these letters shattered his sense of control. As a monarch, he is trained to manage crises, to anticipate risks, to respond with precision, but family matters, particularly matters of the heart, follow no protocol. They have no rulebook, no precedent. The letters forced him to confront the most human aspects of his role: vulnerability, fear, and the profound need to protect those he loves, even when he is powerless to prevent their suffering. And then there were the conversations with Prince William. The two men, bound by blood and responsibility, shared moments of raw honesty, stripped of royal pretense. They discussed Kate's health, the potential impact on the children, and the delicate balance between public duty and private care. Charles reportedly admitted that watching William wrestle with helplessness was almost unbearable. "I have watched him grow into a man capable of leading a nation," Charles said quietly. "Yet here we are, facing something neither of us can control." The king's concern was compounded by the relentless attention of the media. In the palace, every staff member is acutely aware of the power of leaks, rumors, and speculation. Charles reportedly spent hours considering contingency plans, discussing with aides how to protect Kate's privacy while ensuring that her letters, if discovered, would not cause unnecessary distress or misinterpretation. Every word, every gesture, every decision had to be carefully measured. Yet even in the midst of planning, Charles could not ignore the emotional reality. Reports indicate that he spent time alone in the private gardens, walking the same paths he had walked for decades, trying to process his own feelings of fear, worry, and helplessness. The king is trained to bear burdens quietly, to project strength even in moments of uncertainty, but this was different. This was deeply personal. This was his family, his grandchildren, his daughter-in-law, and he could not command the outcome. And then came the moment that would forever be etched in the memories of those present. Charles, speaking to a close aide, reportedly broke down completely, tears streaming down his face. The aide later recounted that it was not a single, fleeting moment of emotion. It was sustained, overwhelming, and utterly human. "I have never seen His Majesty like this," the aide said. "He was not the king. He was a father, a grandfather, a man who loves his family more than anything else in the world." It was at this moment that Charles reportedly made a heartbreaking confession. He feared for Kate's well-being, he feared for the children, and he feared that the weight of their combined pressures might be too much for any one person to bear. He spoke of the letters not just as messages to the children, but as silent signals of her inner turmoil, her private struggle to reconcile public expectation with personal fragility. "She carries the weight of the world," he said, "and yet she carries it for them, for her children. And I do not know if I can ease that burden." What makes this moment particularly striking is the contrast it presents. A king, trained to lead nations, facing the stark reality of human vulnerability. It underscores a truth often obscured by the pomp and ceremony of monarchy. No amount of power, wealth, or status can shield a family from emotional hardship. Charles's confession is a reminder that even in the highest echelons of society, love, worry, and fear are universal and often unmanageable. But here's where it takes an even darker turn. During these private reflections, Charles reportedly received an alarming message from one of the palace's senior aides. The content of the message was cryptic yet deeply unsettling. A potential leak had been identified. Someone, somewhere, may have discovered the existence of Kate's letters. The thought that these profoundly personal documents could reach the public, could become fodder for speculation, threatened to amplify an already unbearable emotional strain. The king, realizing the urgency, reportedly convened an emergency meeting with William and a handful of trusted aides. They discussed strategies to safeguard Kate's privacy, protect the children from unnecessary distress, and manage the delicate interplay between public perception and private care. Every scenario was weighed, every decision analyzed for risk, yet the emotional stakes continued to rise with every passing moment. Charles's heartbreak was compounded by his understanding that the letters were more than private messages. They were symbols of a larger reality, the immense pressures faced by the younger generation of royals. Kate's meticulous preparation, her quiet strength, and her willingness to shoulder emotional burdens reflect a larger pattern of resilience and vulnerability within the monarchy. Charles, who had navigated decades of public scrutiny and personal trials, recognized the courage required to act as Kate was acting. And yet, it did little to soothe his own fear and sorrow. The king's private torment did not go unnoticed. Those who observed his behavior report a new depth of empathy and engagement in his interactions with the children. He reportedly spent more time reading to George, Charlotte, and Louis, listening to their stories, and attempting to foster a sense of security and normalcy despite the private storm raging within the palace. The juxtaposition of public duty and private anguish created a tension that was almost unbearable, highlighting the human cost of a life lived under relentless scrutiny.